So today we are going to be talking about the perimenopause playbook, what every woman should know. So let me tell you a little bit about my guest. Well, first of all, let me kind of show you a banner of what we're going to be talking about today so that you can just really get a handle on it. Again, we are here with Elaine King, who is our guest, and we're talking about the menopause playbook, what every woman should know. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Elaine. Now, keep in mind, we're just not going to be talking about hot flashes today. It's about really understanding what's happening in our bodies so that we can thrive, not survive, and really to help us navigate this journey. So, again, we have a powerhouse guest, Elaine King, who is a national board certified health and wellness coach. She specializes in menopause and perimenopause. For over 14 years, she has helped women leaders, high achievers, and professionals take charge of their health, lose weight without deprivation, and feel confident in her skin. And so we are here with her today talking about the perimenopause playbook. And we're going to talk about some real strategies, not just a whole lot of fluff. So, welcome to the stage, Elaine.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Janice. Excited to
I'm
be here.
so glad you're here. And I was just so excited when I just saw your information on LinkedIn and what you were doing. And I said to myself, I wish I had met her 10 years ago because I don't know if I did it the hard way or what. But I am so glad that you're here to talk about this today. So, first of all, how did you even get interested in this topic in the first place to where you are now helping women to deal with menopause and perimenopause?
hmm Well, long story short, I'm in it. I am one of these women who is experiencing perimenopause, and really, I think I'm in menopause, and we'll talk
Okay.
about what that means a bit later. But I guess it was a couple of years ago. I went to my doctor because I was experiencing some actually was weight gain, and it was all of a sudden weight gain, and I really hadn't made any changes to my health. I've been coaching for 14 years, living a healthy lifestyle. I would say not 100% of the time, but definitely 75 to 80%. And so even in the midst of this, some things were changing, and specifically this increased weight loss. I was curious what my doctor would say, because let me say there had been some other things going on which kind of led me to believe that I probably was in perimenopause,
Okay.
was a very new term for me. But I wanted to know how she would approach it. And so I asked her, what would you suggest besides hormone replacement therapy to handle what I'm experiencing? And she's like, I don't know. It's like the Twilight Zone. We don't really know what's happening in there. And I was thinking, well, based upon the research that I've already been doing and some things I've been doing, I know it's not totally unknown. We do have some strategies that we've learned. And secondly, I thought I'm probably not the only woman who's hearing this from her doctor. And so it became, okay, this is the direction that I need to go in. I have a passion for going into to help other women through this journey.
Wow. That's amazing that your doctor was like, "Oh, it's a mystery kind of thing," and
Right.
just kind of left you hanging out there. And that that's a challenge for me because
Well,
when I think back, yeah, go ahead.
to be fair, they don't really get training in perimenopause and menopause in their
Really?
medical training, and if any, it's very little.
Mm,
So, women haven't even been part of clinical
true.
studies
True.
many years. So the focus just hasn't been there. And so, to her credit, it really is kind of like the Twilight Zone. If she hadn't taken
Wow.
to learn more about it herself. So
Wow.
thankfully,
And
the last couple of years that has changed. It's
mhm,
changing. I feel
mhm.
like it's becoming more definitely a hot topic, and we're learning more about it and how to help ourselves.
Exactly. So we as women really don't have a clue what's happening to our bodies. I remember actually that I had gone to my doctor thinking that I was in perimenopause or in menopause. and it actually was a thyroid problem, right?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so I just assumed that if I got hot or if I was getting anxious, that it was menopause. So there's lots of myths out there about perimenopause and menopause. Can you clarify maybe one or two of those myths that are out there?
Well, I guess one of the first myths is menopause itself and when it
Okay.
starts. So we tend to think that when your period begins to change or you don't have a period anymore, then that's when you are in menopause. When
Mm,
you're having the hot flashes, that means you're in menopause. But perimenopause is actually before menopause. So that could happen up to 15 years before you actually lose your period. It's looking
wow.
like around age 35 that you can begin
Mm,
to experience some changes. And I have to say, with Black women, for us, it can begin definitely that early. And that's just due
wow.
to generational pressures. I would say. So yes, as early as 35, some different things can begin to happen. And so another misconception is that it does have to only be hot flashes or your period stopping, but there are over 50 things that can be happening that point to the changes that your body is making. Because here's the thing, our bodies are designed to go through this process. It is
Mhm,
not foreign. It is not a curse. This
mhm,
is
mhm.
just, I consider it, I've learned to consider it a bookend to puberty. So if you can think
Okay.
back to puberty, what was going on? Inwardly, your body is getting the hormones regulated, specifically estrogen. So she's kind of
Mhm,
making, I call estrogen a she, call her a she. She's making her way up to be regulated, and it's for reproduction. That's one of the
mhm.
it's why that happens at that moment. So if you can think back to when you were in puberty and what was going on, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally
Lee.
too. Okay. So think perimenopause is kind of like the bookend of that. So estrogen's trying to make her way, but it's instead of going up, she's kind of going down. And then progesterone, these are other hormones,
Mhm.
cortisol, melatonin, these testosterone, all these hormones are changing because compared to puberty where we were beginning our reproductive years, now we're ending our reproductive years. Our body doesn't need the energy towards that anymore. Okay.
Okay.
So that's what can cause some of the symptoms. So you mentioned that you went to the doctor, said you had thyroid, it wasn't menopause. Likely, it still was part of the
It was
perimenopause
probably both.
because thyroid changes, which is a hormone, is one of those things that can be kind of uprooted during this perimenopausal time frame. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Now that I look back, again, the symptoms were so similar, and then as I got all the blood tests and everything, it identified that. But you're right, I probably had been dealing with that for some time. Huh,
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting. I love the way you describe it as a bookend because puberty starts it off and then this is the bookend. So I love how you describe that because that's exactly how God created us to be. And you're right, it's not a curse that you go through this. In fact, we should be welcoming it because it's especially if we've already done with having children, we should be welcoming the
Yeah.
Lord to get our bodies to that stage to where we don't have to worry about having children anymore. So let's talk about the body changes that go on. So some of the physical changes that go on. So what
Mm-hmm.
really is happening in a woman's body during perimenopause? What
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things are showing up?
So, as I was saying, estrogen is kind of making her decline. And
Okay.
so during perimenopause, and it's up to 15 years, but it's about 4 to 5 where you
Hmm.
maybe are in the real thick of it. Okay.
Hmm.
And so during your monthly cycle, estrogen is changing. She has a
Okay.
natural progression up and down. Well, during perimenopause and menopause, it's much more erratic. It is not the
Mm.
natural up and down.
Okay.
And you can think about before a period, like PMS, kind of the
Hmm.
change that you're going through. That could be what's magnified during the perimenopausal time frame.
Okay.
So being more irritable, craving
Hmm.
sugar, sweets,
Hmm.
salt more often, um, changes in your digestion, changes in your gut can happen. Um, of course, we know about the temperature changes, so feeling
Right,
hot
right.
not only during the
Hmm.
day but at night. Um, the changes go from the top of your head to the bottom of your toe. I know one of the ones that really boggled my mind when I realized it probably is connected. I was
Hmm.
feeling like something was biting my ankles and there was nothing there. And that just has to do, we're learning with changes in maybe even dry skin or nerve changes, down there
Hmm.
in our lower area.
Hmm.
So that's one of those little weird things that can be happening that we don't know. Hey, this could be connected to my hormones,
Right.
changing.
Let me ask you this question because this is something I've always read that perimenopause or menopause is the timing of it is directly related to when you first had your menses. So, can you talk a little bit about that? What you know about that?
They're finding that it's not necessarily connected.
Hmm.
There's not a
Oh,
strong
okay.
connection as when you have the better connection could be when your family members, like your mom, when she started. Like if she started earlier, possibly you might start earlier. And this is if your mom knew when she started. Because sometimes I know looking back at with my mom, she there was a point where we weren't sure what was going on. She
Hmm.
put mood had changed, and later we found out, oh, that was menopause. That was perimenopause. So a better gauge could be when your family
Hmm.
member started to go through it.
Wow, that's amazing because I don't know if I ever asked my mom when she started or anything. I didn't ask her any of that. I was just so I had sisters and I was just so nervous and ashamed. Asked my sisters to get me what I needed. I didn't even really want to tell my mom at the time.
Uh-huh. You mean for puberty? Or
Yes,
mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And can
that
I
that's
say to you
something.
another thing physical that tends to happen? And this is probably one of the things that's not talked about enough. So of
Okay.
course we have those outwardly things that we
Mhm.
can feel or see, but there's some stuff happening on the inside. One of them you mentioned is the thyroid changes, but also this is when chronic conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and even Alzheimer's can come to the forefront because of these hormonal changes that are happening. So, if you know someone who all of a sudden is being diagnosed with diabetes in their 40s and 50s, and they're a woman, it's yes, it's due to lifestyle, but it's also could be due to the changes in their hormones and not knowing how to address the changes in their hormones. Okay, which
Mm.
exacerbates what's happening with their sugar levels. So we want to pay close attention, not just to hot flashes and mood swings and brain fog, but these other chronic things can be lurking beneath the surface. And so that's why we want to figure this out because this is going to affect us down the road.
I can't I can't name how many women that I know that suddenly had diabetes in their 40s and 50s. You're so right. And they thought they had been doing everything right, and then suddenly they are having to use insulin.
Mhm. Mhm.
Wow. Okay, so lots of things are going on with our body. So we're going to take a station break here right quick. And then when we come back, I really want to dive into this menopause playbook that we talked about and some of the strategies that we can use. Of course, we definitely need to have a conversation with our doctor, but again, if they're limited in information, and they're just going to focus on maybe even trying to just give you some hormone replacements. They don't really talk to you about some of the other strategies that you can do. So we want to bring you back here in a second just to talk about some of those strategies or this playbook we're going to put together for our sister friends. So let's go ahead and go to a video and then we will be right back. Are you helping others to achieve their goals? An aspiring author? or you're already an author? Do you have a wealth of knowledge stuck in your head and you're ready to teach what you know? Whether you're creating an ebook, an online course, or other learning materials, you're probably thinking to yourself, where do I start? So, are you ready to turn your knowledge into impact and monetize your content? With a course building technology learning management system for experts, you can have stress free tech. Hi there. I'm Dr. Janice Love, the founder and the CEO of Pearls Perfected Institute, where we help you to turn your knowledge into impact. And we guide you every step of the way, and that's worth celebrating. Visit us at pearlsperfectedinstitute.com. Again, pearlsperfectedinstitute.com. All right, so we are back here with Elaine King, and we are talking about the Menopause Playbook, what every woman should know. So far, I have really learned so much from you in this conversation stuff that, again, I wish I had known so many years ago when I was 35 or so. I'm done with all that, but it's going to help me to help my daughters because I have daughters who are at that age now, at 35 and 40, and they're starting to experience some challenges. So that's going to be so helpful for them. So let's get into this perimenopause playbook. So, Coach, we need the playbook because you have the answers to some of the things that we need help with. So, why don't we start with food? What, from a food perspective, you talked about us craving more sugar, but what can we do for food from a food perspective to get us through this phase?
Mhm. And so before we get to food, I wanna back up a little bit and talk
Okay.
about the environment that we're living in that's really affecting how we are experiencing perimenopause and
Mhm.
menopause. So I talked about that I'm working with leaders, women leaders, and the reason why is I see that, and I was one of them, who living in the rat race. I don't know a better way to
Yeah,
say it. Burning the
sure.
candle at both ends.
Hmm.
So not only working a full-time job, but also involved in all these things outside of work, church, different
Hmm.
organizations, working events, trying to have a social life. So all of these
Hmm.
things. And um, sleep wasn't a priority. I'm thinking it back 14 years ago before I even became a coach, and really the reason why I became a
Hmm.
coach. Um, it was all about doing, right? Doing instead of.
Doing.
And when we get to the perimenopause and menopause, and let me just say the 40s and 50s, our 40s and 50s, this time when our body is making this change, it's really an invitation for us to slow down. And that can almost
Hmm.
sound like a bad word. You know what I'm saying? Because we're
You're
so
right.
just doing all we're it's like we're expected to, and we have
Mhm.
to. But it's an invitation for us to slow down. And when we don't, that's when our body starts to experience all these things that it seems like what's going on. Okay. So when it comes to our eating, things to think about is, am I eating? Am I eating enough? So how many times have you, and especially as a business owner, been, going about your day and realize, I haven't had breakfast, or I haven't did I eat lunch today? And so you end up eating 1 or 2 meals more often than not per day. That right there means you're not getting the nutrients that your body needs. I don't care what you're eating. You're not getting
Right.
enough,
Hmm.
and you're not setting yourself up for the energy that your body needs, okay? Your body kinda goes into a fight or flight mode, which makes you less resilient to stress. And this is
Mm.
just because you're not eating. Okay. So eating enough is important. Then secondly, of course, eating the right things. So the what is important too.
Right.
Eating those when it comes to menopause, a anti-inflammatory way of
Mhm.
eating. So
Okay.
that's basically colorful food, having color on your plate. And if it's brown or white, that would be considered one color. So we're talking about lots of vegetables, fruit, throughout your
Mhm.
day.
Mhm.
This is going to give your body the minerals and nutrients that it needs as it's making its changes. Okay. So how we eat, what we eat is going to be super important.
When I think about the myths or whatever I've heard about menopause, or even the things I noticed in my own body, is that you gain weight. So you're telling me I'm not eating enough?
Yes. And so that's one of the misnomers that we need to eat less and exercise more. And that did work in our 20s and 30s. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is the difference. Your body was set up for that to happen. But once those changes started to happen hormonally, our body needs the nutrients in order to be able to continue with the hormone building that it needs and the regulation of your blood sugar, your blood pressure,
Mhm.
cholesterol. So we do want to be eating um, the right foods. So that even brings up fasting. Have you
Mhm.
tried intermittent fasting?
Yes, yes.
So that works great for women in their 30s, okay, to some
Uh-huh.
degree. But once
Mhm.
we have to evaluate, is this really working for me? Like, am I fasting and losing weight
Right.
consistently?
Mhm.
If not, we want to take a closer look and say, maybe I need to start eating breakfast again, uh, and just maybe a lighter breakfast, or not as early, but reevaluate the fasting,
Mhm.
because once again, will you be able to get enough of the nutrients in? One of those main nutrients is protein.
Mhm.
Get enough protein throughout your day. Secondly, would be fiber. We got to get enough
Mhm.
fiber in. And so if your eating window is really small, it's just hard to get in that amount of food that
Right, because 'cause you're not hungry, because you just ate, right? You waited that long to eat, then you eat a bunch, and then you're not hungry again right away, and then your window is starting to cut off, and you say, "Okay, I gotta get something real fast, but I'm not gonna get too much."
uh-huh. Yeah, or some people eat a whole lot during the window that they eat,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that can affect sleep, because what your body's trying to digest all that food that you ate later in the evening.
Wow. So,
So kind
with
of
women, so there is still that struggle, or that with weight gain at this stage, right? Maybe it's because our bodies are storing some fat. What's going on from a weight gain perspective?
Yeah, exactly right. So, um, visceral fat, visceral
Mhm.
fat as estrogen is going down, visceral fat starts to increase, because the body's trying to figure out where to put some of this excess that's within us. Okay,
Mm.
visceral fat is the fat that's on the inside, so it's
Okay.
around our organs. It's not the fat that you can pinch.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's where the belly comes
Mhm.
from, extra belly. It's from that visceral fat, and addressing that comes down to eating what we eat, but also addressing stress.
Okay. All right. So sleep is a huge challenge, because if people are talking about waking up with hot flashes, or just their circadian rhythm or something being off, what can you tell us as far as what can help us from a sleep perspective?
Yeah, sleep is a non-negotiable at this time of life. Even my doctor, my holistic doctor, so I have another one now.
Mhm.
She said, yes, looking at some lab work, she said, yes, there are some things going on here, and I can give you supplements to help, but the root of this is that you need to be getting some quality sleep. So
Mm.
changes in certain hormones and vitamin levels and mineral sleep. Okay, that is when our body is able to reset, restore, rejuvenate itself. Um, so sleep is a non-negotiable. That's when everything is your blood pressure is regulated, your blood sugar is regulated, is overnight. Cortisol. Okay,
Mhm.
so we talk about um, their circadian rhythm and our sleep wake cycle.
Mhm.
Cortisol is supposed to be low, in the evening. Melatonin is supposed to be higher to help us
Mhm.
get good sleep. And then at some point before we wake up, cortisol starts to make an incline so that we can wake up feeling refreshed. But if we are not allowing our body to completely get into that restful state at night, but also during the day, cortisol is not able to do the wave that it's supposed to. So we end up feeling tired but wired. We end up
Oh,
feeling exhausted, not refreshed when we wake
mhm.
up. And often this is because cortisol is not at the level that it needs to be. Now, I want to say this too: cortisol is naturally increasing during perimenopause,
Okay.
so it's not a bad thing that
Mhm,
cortisol is for our protection, our safety.
mhm.
Um, as estrogen goes down, cortisol naturally increases. But when you add in extra stress on a level that's already higher of
Mhm.
cortisol, and extra stress can be um, deadlines at work. It
Oh,
can
anything.
be you're
Family?
working,
Yes.
yeah, family, finances, something happens that you weren't expecting. And so then that cortisol level that's already naturally a little bit higher, you put on this extra stuff, and then that's where it overflows. And it's harder to feel regulated, from a system point of view, from a stress point of view.
Yes, because
So
when I think
sleep.
about that time in my life, when I was in my 30s and 40s, I was parenting, I was trying to be a wife, I was trying to be a vice president at work. There were so many things that I felt like I had to do in a day's time. I would simply, stay up later to get things done and then
Mhm,
try to catch up on the weekend, which I know was all wrong because
mhm.
you're just causing yourself more challenges going to sleep. I know that.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
trying to find ways to get that quality sleep
Mhm.
um, is vital. It's
It
vital.
is.
That's like the se- the secret sauce.
Yeah, so do you recommend people do like a sleep diary or those kinds of things to really track their sleep patterns? I downloaded something the other day from my insurance company that was telling me how to get a good night's sleep, even though I
Mhm.
have worked very hard to master this, from
Good.
my sheets to my fan to my darkness to all that stuff,
All
trying to
those.
make sure I get that sleep.
Yeah.
Wow. Whew, so you talked a little bit about stress management. Now, when we typically go to our doctors, they're either going to ask us, or do we want to take hormones, that kind of stuff. Tell me about a little bit about how you work with women who you are coaching through this phase of their life.
hmm Yeah. So as a health coach, my approach is holistic. So it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, which I consider the foundations of health, right? That is
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
foundation, which for me, spiritual is like the center of it all. That's really where, when I made my own personal transformation health wise, that was the catalyst, was the
Mhm.
spiritual change that
Mhm.
happened. So I'm working with the foundations, those things I just mentioned, which covers your eating, your exercise, your
Mhm.
sleep, your stress management. From there, if you need something extra after you've gotten some good routines and habits established with the foundation, then you may look at supplements.
Mm,
And
okay.
then from there, you might look at um, medications,
Mhm.
HRT. So HRT can definitely have a place in perimenopause and menopause, even post-menopause health. But I don't think it should be the first step.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
should be the first step. So when women work with me, we're addressing those habits that I just talked about.
Mhm.
More importantly, the things that get in the way of you doing the habits. So overcoming
Right.
obstacles. So looking at our schedule, how can we um, make space for ourselves, make space for you, um, setting boundaries. Setting boundaries with your time, knowing that no can be a complete sentence. I heard that a long time ago, and I thought that is huge. That is huge.
It is. It is.
Yeah, and being able to say no to good things, I remember
Mhm.
when I had to make some decisions about pulling back at church in a certain
Right.
area. Um, the Lord said, I need you to have complete focus in this other area. And so we're going to have
Mhm.
to say no to that, at least for now. At least for now. And so then it's not like I'm not doing anything. I'm just having to focus on this one thing that is going to um, be more in alignment with what he wants me to do. So setting those boundaries with your time is
Mhm.
a lot of what I work with women on. Getting comfortable with that, especially if they're used to being people pleasers or self-sacrificers, feeling guilty for taking time for themselves. That's a big part of what we work on, time session by session. And these changes don't happen overnight.
Right.
you know, the those things are ingrained in us. I was raised to be a doer,
Mhm.
to get things done, to be independent, right? And so it doesn't come naturally necessarily.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And I so appreciate what you're doing. How can people find you? Because you are you are a resource that as women are experiencing these challenges and then they're starting to see them physically, mentally, in that holistic manner, even it's affecting you spiritually. How can
Mhm.
they find you to get in touch with you, to get some coaching?
Yeah, the best way would be on LinkedIn. You can look me up with my name, Elaine King. That's kind of like my website, and also I post, information there. I'm doing monthly um, talks that you can find out about there. So that's going to be the best place to find me.
Great, great. And so you're here in the Kansas City area, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay, you're here. So you do see individuals face to face. Do you also do any online work with individuals?
I see individuals virtually. So everyone,
Okay,
it's like this. We're talking
okay,
virtually.
okay.
Yeah,
So no excuse, no matter where you live, you can contact Elaine King to get the help that you need so you
that's
can get your own playbook and get this going. So you'll be you'll be who you're supposed to be at this stage, enjoying life, appreciating the blessings,
thriving.
uh, thanking God for really how He made us, right?
Yes,
So
thriving.
I would so suggest that you find Elaine. She owns our organization. Her company is called Simply Healthy, and
Hmm.
again, simply healthy. Not that we have to go out and do all these things. She
No,
can help you to come up with a simple strategy that can have you feeling a whole lot better and really being able to embrace life and enjoy life instead of darn, I'm going through menopause, right?
yeah, this is a portal to become, the very best that God would have you to be.
Yes, yes. So give us one final closing word that you want to leave with our audience today. And again, remember, ladies, we are not in this alone. If you're a woman, you're going to experience this sooner or later. And this season of life should be a blessing again, not a curse. So leave us with one final thought, Elaine, for our audience today.
I'm learning to think of perimenopause and menopause like the transformation of a butterfly. So you think about the butterfly, the caterpillar, and it goes into its cocoon. And there's a lot of things happening when they're in that cocoon. I consider that the perimenopause time of life. Um, there's struggle. We know there's going to be struggle and challenges, but also some beautiful things are happening in there, which is evident as the butterfly's wings come forth. And that's what we're looking to be butterflies, just being able to be our authentic self at this stage of our life, not who we used to be per se, but an even better version of who we are. And so just let your butterfly wings, beautiful butterfly wings, um, come forth.
I love it. Thank you so much, Elaine. You shared so much wisdom. You've given so many nuggets and you've given us hope. Again, because we will all go through this. So I am thankful that I was able to get you to come on to be our guest today for Asking Search for a Sister Friend.